Today I've got my suitcase out, but I'm not going on holidays. Instead, I'm planning on reviewing all my sketchbooks. I want to do a review of every sketchbook I've ever owned, but I'm not sure if they're all in here or whether there's some more hiding around the house somewhere. But I will try and get everything in. Ooh, sketchbooks. 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 It's quite funny. Sometimes I watch videos of people doing sketchbook tours and say, ooh, I finally finished this sketchbook after 6 months. And it's kind of like, in 6 months, I would go through, I don't even know how many sketchbooks. I really use a lot of sketchbooks. I draw fast. I like doing simple drawings. I'm not the sort of person who, spends hours and hours on one sketch. Editing cat here. I just wanted to add that I'm not trying to have some weird flex that I use a lot of sketchbooks or anything. I bought and used a lot of these during lockdown where I had nothing else to do but buy and use sketchbooks. But of course, everyone works at their own pace, and it's not a competition to see who can fill up the most sketchbooks, but how much fun and how much enjoyment you get out of sketching. Let's start reviewing these guys. Okay, I'm going to start off with this pile. I have piles of sketchbooks everywhere now. I should have planned this out a bit better because we don't have much space, and yeah, sketchbooks everywhere. But yeah, so I would call this pile the cheap spiral bound sketchbook pile. And I'm starting off with Strathmore. I wouldn't actually call that cheap. I'd call it maybe mid-price. This is the Tone sketchbook. And what can I say about this? 50 sheets. The weight there, 118 GSM. So it's quite lightweight paper. And yeah, I use this mainly for life drawing. Back in, 2 years ago. And yeah, it's quite good paper. I like using the tone paper, especially for life drawing. It was good for using pen and ink, like ink pen, fine liner. Good for using markers. I've used markers a lot on this. Colour pencil was really, found it hard to get, like to lay it down quite thickly. But that could have been a bit to do with my skill level at the time, as well as the paper. And yeah, it holds ink really well. And I've also used a bit of crayon, pastel crayon. It's good paper and quite liked it. This is just from the local stationery shop, so it would have been about $2 or $3. It's just cartridge paper. Holds watercolor quite well though, like considering it would have been so cheap. I've only done like wash of watercolor on this, so just basic cartridge paper, cheap. And that was 110 GSM paper A5. Then on to this one. I have no idea what this sketchbook is, and I've stuck that over it so I can't see. But it does have this sterling. But it's quite thin paper. This also would have been a cheap one, I reckon, off Amazon from my local stationery shop. And yeah, it's quite good for just doing like with fine liner pen with, I think that's all marker, maybe Tombow markers and gel pen. And I've also done some wash stuff in this. Yeah, I wouldn't be putting big layers of paint on or anything, but that worked quite well. So then on to the next one, Derwent Academy. I think these are both Derwent Academy. And this is A4, 110 GSM. Again, basic 120 pages basic cartridge paper. Not sure what it's called cartridge paper in other places, but yeah, we call it cartridge paper. So yeah, I've done watercolor, thin wash of watercolor on that. The paper's buckled a bit, but it's still quite okay. And there could even be ink on that, or maybe watercolor, granulating watercolor. And I went for a bigger size in this Strathmore toned grey. So this is exactly the same as the one I just showed you, but in a bigger size. It's pretty much all life drawing in this. Yeah, the pastel really doesn't work well with this paper. Needs something with a bit more grain to it to hold the pastel. Then last in this category is this Strathmore Visual Journal. This is a watercolor book, but yeah, 44 pages, and it's 300 GSM, so getting to a lot thicker paper here. I don't think this one was that cheap. I had to buy it through Amazon to get it here in Australia, and I think it ended up not working out that cheap. It's quite smooth paper. This is when I first got my Tombos and was swatching them and playing. But yeah, this is watercolor on it. More watercolor. I really don't like the backs of the pages. The backs of the pages are a bit too, I don't like the texture on them. But yeah, but just some basic watercolor. I really want to do some more watercolor on this side. It's a really nice texture. It's got a bit of like tooth to the paper, but not too much. I think if I could get hold of this cheaper, it's a really good sketchbook to have, but when you're paying top dollar, because you need to get it, I think I might have even had to got it from Amazon in the US and paid the shipping, and that just worked out way too expensive for this kind of sketchbook it is. But yeah, so they're all my cheaper spiral bound sketchbooks. And we'll go on to the next lot. This doesn't really fit into any of the other categories. I guess I could have done a toned paper category. It's a craft paper pad. It was really cheap. Art Spectrum's an Australian brand, and I have no idea how much this cost, but it was cheap. And I've used it mainly for life drawing. Some of these where I've added water, it's just not good. The paper has kind of almost water, like a coating to resist water. So more for dry media. That's watercolor, yeah. Didn't work too well. And this was ink. Again, yeah, don't like how it works on this paper. But this is A3. It was quite a cheap pad and really good for dry medium. And I've still got a heap of pages in it. I should remember to use it next time I'm doing life drawing. This is probably one of the least favourite sketchbooks I've ever bought. I got it in Japan. I was in Tokyo and I was running out. My sketchbook was running out and I was in the art supply shop, so I decided to grab this. I've used like one page in it and just really hate the texture of the paper. But now that I've got it out, I think I might try using it with different media. Could just be, I was using neocolor pencils and then adding a bit of water, neocolor crayons and adding a bit of water with my water pen, and so maybe that's why I didn't like it. But I do know I was working really hard just to lay the colour down and getting a bit frustrated with it. Then I have this guy, which I didn't want to put in my cheap spiral bound sketchbooks because it is a Stillman and Burn sketchbook, not cheap. I used to love buying stickers to put on my sketchbooks when I first started sketching. Stillman and Burn, yeah, it's quite nice. I really hate Stillman and Burn sketchbooks because well, I hate buying them because I have all the alpha, beta, blah, 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 so many series and so many different types within the series. It just does my head in and I can't really think about what I want to buy. So I just don't buy them. That could be just, yeah, my laziness, but it's a lot of effort. A lot of mental effort, and I kind of feel like they're a bit pricey, so I don't want to buy the wrong sketchbook. When I bought this one, I actually was not wanting to buy a spiral bound, but yeah, getting overwhelmed with the options, having to check the paper type, like if it's alpha. I'm not sure if that come out on camera, but my neighbours are being very noisy. Yeah, and I ended up just using this as a journaling book. That was when I first started using gouache and I was doing online tutorials. I really loved stamping at that time. I got a stamp set and I just loved stamping. And then, yeah, I kind of like doing the journaling. And it really does work well with any kind of medium. Like the watercolor works really well on gouache. Different inks and everything. Quite a nice, and I've still got some pages left at the end of that. Oh, crap. Next up, these are all the Jackson's Art house brand sketchbooks. They are super cheap. Like, I think even the biggest ones are less than $5. They're a really good buy. I wouldn't like specifically put in an order to buy these, but if you are ordering from Jackson's Art, they're a really good thing to just add on to your order. And yeah, just if you're paying for the shipping anyway, I mean, yeah, paying for the shipping anyway, you might as well grab a couple of their cheaper sketchbooks. And I guess if you live like in the UK, that's not such an issue, but here in Australia, usually the shipping costs can really add up. I've used this with a ton of different media. I think this is Intense Pencil and the Parallel Ink Pen. Then watercolor, not watercolor, pencils. I think I actually did put down it could be Ecoline background and then added on pencils. A lot of these, that's what I've done. Holds the pencil well. It's got a nice bit of grain without being too grainy. And yeah, I've used some wet media on it and it handles it okay, as good as you can expect from a sketchbook like this. I'm not sure what the paper weight is on these. They're quite thin paper. It says here. So with this one, no, it doesn't actually say the paper weight, it's thin paper. And yeah, just a good all-round sketchbook. They're not got many pages. I find them quite good for if you only have sketchbooks for a specific purpose. Like this was when I did the 1 week 100 people challenge. This one's for life drawing. This one was from Zoom sessions on Patreon. And oh, that was when I was in Tokyo, a Tokyo sketchbook. And other Zoom sessions, drawing at the market, which I don't think I've finished. I should finish that. I'll take that to the market next time I go and I can finish that off. And yeah, I quite like the bigger size as well. Another one for Patreon sessions. And this one sketch in here where my dog ate it. Started doing the sketch, come back, and yep. Oh dear me. But yeah, the Jackson sketchbooks, if you're doing a Jackson's order, it's worth throwing a couple of those on to the order. And easy to pick up and put in your bag too, like something like this. You can put in your bag. It's very lightweight, easy to carry. So, thumbs up for the Jackson sketchbooks. I've talked about these before. I really love the Muji sketchbooks. They've got a nice little ribbon to tie them up. Decent cartridge paper. Medium, like quite lightweight but not too thin. Nice texture. And a nice thick hard cover at the back. So you're getting a lightweight sketchbook without having a lightweight sketchbook, but you've still got that to press on, and you're not getting flippy floppy sketchbook that makes your lines go all wonky. I don't think I've used wet media on these. I only used marker, pencils, Ecolines, that kind of thing, and works incredibly well for that. They do come in weird sizes. This is like an F1. I have no idea what that means in normal talk. Oh, that's one I've used wet media on. It doesn't work very well. But yeah, for dry media, it is really good. Markers. And then, yeah, there's this size as well, which is the... I have no idea what this is called. This one's got the thick back. No, it's only got the thick front, but I've used it round the wrong way. So, F4 works with a lot of different medium. So, again, fun. These are one of my favourites. I'm very biased when it comes to these. The only reason I don't have more is that they don't have them to order online here in Australia. So it means I've got to go to the shop in the city, and I hate going into the city. I hate going into the Muji store. The Muji store here is really annoying and overcrowded and always, yeah, full of people. And so, yeah, Muji. If you made your store better to shop in, I would spend a lot more money there. I've got a few of these sketchbooks. They're a brand called Little Green Tree, 150 GSM, 25 pages. Quite good, quite cheap. I get these from my local art shop where I just go in and buy in person. I do have drawings in all directions in that one. And it's a bit coarser paper than most of my other sketchbooks, but that can be good if you're using colour pencils or even markers, and that work well on it. These are the Moleskine sketchbook. I quite like using these for travel sketchbooks because they're a nice thick sketchbook, so you're not worried about running out of paper. They take all kinds of media quite well. I've painted in this, used wet media, but I haven't used watercolor. I was using intense pencils, and this is sort of how the intense pencil goes. Sometimes with the wet media, it does get a bit, I'm just going to show that, it sort of separates a bit and shows up the green of the paper. But for just general everyday use, it's a very versatile sketchbook. The only thing I don't like about it is that it is very thinly bound, like the cover is very thin, so you need to have something if you've got like a satchel type bag or you're sitting at a table in a cafe, it's fine, but if you sort of got it on your knee, sometimes your lines can go a bit wonky because there's nothing at all supporting the sketchbook. But yeah, I quite enjoy using them, and I like having a thick sketchbook. It makes you feel like you can just not get too precious and you can, yeah, play around. So, very good for travel, very good, again, something you can put in your bag and take out with you without it weighing you down. Moleskine. This big meaty pile of sketchbooks. These are the Royal Talens Art Creation sketchbooks, which I'm sure most people are onto by now. They're a good little sketchbook, and yeah, I've used wet media in them. Inks, watercolor, crayons. They are pretty good all-purpose sketchbook, and that's paint pens. Quite thin paper, but it doesn't seem to have a lot of bleed through or anything like that, so that's always good. That's my current one I'm using, so I should put that separate. Yeah, not much else I can say about them. If you're not onto them already, it's worth grabbing one. stopped using them as much as I used to because you could get them really cheap on Amazon here. That's how the watercolor goes on it, so gives you a good idea of the wet media. It hasn't even buckled the page on that. Yeah, I was buying them from Amazon here in Australia, and they were about $6 or $7 for this like big sketchbook. And then I didn't buy any for a while, and when I went back on to buy a new one, they'd gone up to like $30. I'm not paying $30. Like, no. So I found a local place that had them, but yeah, I think the main selling point with these, the main attraction, is that they are so cheap. You're buying a cheap sketchbook, you can put it's hardcover, and you just, yeah, can be really loose. You're not being precious at all. With a $6 or $7 sketchbook, with a $30 sketchbook, you do get a little bit more precious. Great, you can draw over the cover. So yeah, if I find another supplier, another place to buy them where they're cheap, then I'll be getting back into it. This is done with ink, so again, it takes the wet media really well for the thin paper. Very, very smooth paper. If you like a smooth paper sketchbook, these are the sketchbook for you. There are actually two things I don't like about the Royal Talens sketchbook. One is that the paper is really almost a cream colour, and so if you're photographing or scanning pictures, it doesn't come out really well. The other, which only really matters, I guess, if you're scanning things, is the rounded corners. This size I really like. This is, I'll put my hand on it so you can see, A5. This size, because it's got the hard cover and you can't fold the pages up, I don't like it as much. It's good for using at home, but you've got to have it more space to use it. And if you're out sketching in public, I just feel a bit conspicuous having a sketchbook this size. Like I'm sitting there and people, I feel like everyone's looking at me like it's a real, like, having a neon sign. Look, here's someone sketching in their really big sketchbook. Come over and talk to them about their sketching. And that is a real turn off for me. It's, yeah, I don't like being conspicuous. Whereas this size, you can sort of sit there with it in your hand, sketch, and nobody notices you. That could be me just projecting too. I don't know. No, I took one of this size to my local market, and by having it spread out, I'll put my hand there for comparison, spread out on the table in front of me. Yeah, it was really too much. Too much. Too much. Okay, now I'm just going to finish off with, oh, not finishing off, but just go on to some random sketchbooks. The Fabriano, it's beautiful paper, I love it, but this size, I ordered this size by accident. I thought it was going to be bigger, and then when it got here, I'm like, what am I going to do with such a small sketchbook? I really don't like something small. They're quite tightly bound too, so you're sort of having to go, use all your muscle to get them flat. Especially at this size, it's really noticeable. But it does take any kind of media, wet media, dry media. Probably the wet media isn't as great on it, but it's still good. This size is a bit better because you've sort of got more of a weight to hold the paper open. But it's still, yeah, don't like the binding. The binding is the big downfall of the Fabriano sketchbook. So that's those two. Then this one I think is Clairefontaine. Doesn't say in it, but I'm pretty sure it is. This, yeah, it's good for, you can use any kind of media. I think it is meant to be watercolor paper, but I ended up after the first few pages, using it more for markers and things. I was really into markers at the time. That is watercolor, and I'm just gonna, where is that? Yeah, if you look at how that's granulated on the paper, it's really lovely. Not my sketch, the granulation I mean. I quite like that sketch though. And this one. So yeah, it's not a size I'd normally buy. I think I just picked it up at impulse buy at the art shop. It does have this cover that comes out a bit further than the paper, and then a little hook there to put your pen in. I never ever use that. It's not my kind of thing. I don't like loops, elastic loops on things, but that could be really handy if you wanted to take it out, and you can just put your pen in there and you've got everything you need. Then this is a book that school book Japanese kids use it to practice writing, and I just picked it up because I wanted to play around with sketching on it. So it's not meant to be drawing paper, but quite good. Like that's with pencil and neocolor. Pencil goes on it really well. But yeah, just had fun mucking around with that. And then this is the Fabriano drawing paper, 180 GSM, A4 size. And I quite like this better than the bound sketchbooks because it doesn't have that problem of being not laying flat. I'm still working on this. I haven't used watercolor on this, but hey, I did that picture and totally forgot I did it. Yeah, I haven't used watercolor. I've used ink quite a bit. Works well with ink. That one's crayons. And again, just a lovely, lovely all-purpose paper. So yeah, I'll definitely buy this again. It's one of my favorite drawing sketchbooks, multimedia sketchbooks. And finally, watercolor sketchbooks. I put these separate because I think watercolor sketchbooks are very different to drawing sketchbooks. You can draw on any kind of paper, or you can watercolor on any kind of paper too, but you really just want to get something that handles water well. So I put this one. This one's a Harmula, and I liked it but didn't love it. I kind of felt the watercolors went a bit murky on it. Didn't get the kind of effects I wanted. And it was very hard to get layers. There. So I'd say this is a good sketchbook but not a great sketchbook. Not in my love it to death category. Like that. That was from a drawing challenge on Instagram. And yeah, it wasn't cheap, so good but not great. Then when I first started sketching, I got really into the Moleskine watercolor sketchbooks, but to be honest, I don't love them. I don't like how the watercolor sits on the paper. I kind of feel, for me at least, with watercolor, the kind of sizing on the paper makes a huge difference to how much I enjoy using them. And I quite like stuff where I call it sinky paper, where the water sinks into the paper, it doesn't sit on top. And these are the opposite of that. The colour sits on top. It's really good if you want to do something like a pen and wash sketch. You want to build up layers and do that kind of thing. But if you're looking to do something that, I'll put all these gouache. That was very early on in my sketching. Yeah, if you want to get the kind of effect I was going for there, then with the colours merging and moving around, this is not a sketchbook, but great for pen and wash. Put that aside for a minute. The Jackson's Art Block, which I wouldn't really call a sketchbook, but I don't like it. The paper's too textured. Oh, it's a rough one, so maybe I'd like it better if I'd got a cold press or something. Etcher sketchbook. I've talked before about my feelings about Etcher sketchbooks. I don't like them. Don't like them. And I'm never ever really happy with anything I've done in them. This is my other Etcher sketchbook, 2 different kinds, but I don't like either of them. And I really should use that up though. Such an expensive sketchbook and I rarely use it. I just, yeah, don't like how I like the paper, but I don't like the binding. And I've talked a lot about that in my art materials I regret buying video, so maybe we'll just leave it at that. Let's just say I'm never ever going to get sponsorship from Etcher sketchbooks. Then last but not least, this is the Saunders Waterford. These are both the same, but that one's got a cover and that one doesn't. Saunders Waterford from St Cuthbert Mill. They're called fat pads. I think these are made exclusively for Jackson's. I've never seen them anywhere else. It's 300 GSM paper. It's cotton and just really gorgeous. And I'm going to show you these pictures that aren't gorgeous. And be like, what are you talking about? Yep. Oh, I quite like that one. Yeah, I just love the way the colour moves. It's really good if you want to try getting, you know, all those wet in wet effects that, I mean, to me that's why you're using watercolour, because you're wanting to get that kind of colour movement, the paint moving, merging and that kind of thing. Otherwise, just use some other paint, cheaper paint. Oh, I like that. I can't even remember doing that. But yeah, again, just playing with the movement of the paint. Some of these are unfinished sketches that I just started doing and I hated. I find when I use watercolour, it's very hit and miss. I either love it or hate it. But yeah, these are my number one in watercolour sketchbooks. Number one. If you're going to do watercolour, Saunders Waterford. I have to say, I know some people hate the sort of cotton, 100% cotton paper like this with the kind of sinky, paint sinky, water sinky texture. If you are like urban sketching, you're going out sketching on location, it does take a long time for the paint to dry. Like you would probably need to be working on a few sketches at a time, start the first part one of one sketch, move on to another sketchbook, do something else, come back. Yeah. And I almost got to include this. This is the Strathmore Watercolour Travel Sketchbook. And when I was saying about the sinky and non-sinky qualities of the paper, this one is the complete opposite. The paint just sits on top. It isn't nice to work with. Well, I don't find it nice to work with, that's what I should say. And yeah, this one, yeah, it's an okay sketchbook, but again, I didn't love it. So what's your favourite sketchbook? Do you have a go-to type of sketchbook that you always recommend? Or are you happy just using whatever you've got lying around? Let me know in the comments. I really like knowing about new sketchbooks and trying new sketchbooks, buying new sketchbooks. And thanks for watching. Remember, if you enjoyed my content, please subscribe to my channel. If you like my video, thumbs up the like button. Don't be like me the other day and accidentally hit dislike. Thumbs up. That's the best. See you next time. Bye. Gotta put all the sketchbooks away now. Ooh. I don't really want to do that, but I guess I can't live in a house filled with sketchbooks.